The stars don't care about us. Out here in the cold, endless dark, we're just specks, tiny, fragile things clinging to the edge of oblivion. The universe is vast, silent, and cruel. And yet, we survive. Not because we're the strongest, not because we're the fastest or the smartest, but because somewhere in the shadows between the stars, something is watching over us. You've heard the stories, right? The whispers from deep space pilots, the garbled transmissions from lost colonies. Something out there doesn't just see us, it protects us. They call it the Guardian. No one knows where it came from. No one knows why it cares. But when humanity is pushed to the brink, when all hope is lost, it appears. And then, the monsters who thought we were easy prey learn the hard way. They should have left us alone. This is one of those stories. The Elysium, a deep space research vessel, was drifting at the edge of known space when it picked up the signal. A distress call, weak but unmistakable, human. The voice on the other end was ragged, desperate. They're coming. They're hunting us. God, please, someone, and then static. The coordinates led to a dead system, no planets, no stations. Just a graveyard of ships, torn apart like paper. Captain Vera ordered the crew to arm the weapons. They weren't a warship, but they weren't helpless either. Still, as the Elysium slid into that graveyard, every sensor screaming warnings, they all felt it, the weight of something wrong. The dead ships weren't just destroyed. They were dissected. Like something had taken them apart just to see how they worked. Then the lights went out. The ship shuddered. Power failed. 4-3 heartbeats, there was nothing but darkness and the sound of breathing, too fast, too scared. When the emergency lights flickered back on, the crew realized they weren't alone. Something was on the ship. And it wasn't the thing that had killed the others. Because outside the viewport, silhouetted against the distant stars, something massive moved. Not a ship. Not anything they'd ever seen before. It turned, slow and deliberate, and for one terrifying second, the crew of the Elysium understood, they were being watched. Then the real nightmare began. The thing that had slaughtered the other ships? It was still here. And it had just found them. Alarms blared. Metal screamed as something clawed its way through the hull. The crew scrambled, weapons raised, but deep down they knew, bullets wouldn't save them. Not from this. And then, the Guardian woke up. The air inside the Elysium was thick with fear. Every breath tasted like metal and sweat. The crew clutched their rifles, fingers trembling, eyes locked on the jagged tear in the hull. Something was out there. No, not just something. The thing that had turned those other ships into scrap. And it was getting closer. Captain Vera's voice cut through the silence, sharp but steady. Seal the breach. Now. Engineers scrambled, welding torches flaring to life as they tried to patch the gaping wound in their ship. Sparks flew, casting frantic shadows against the walls. But everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. Whatever had ripped through the other vessels like they were nothing wouldn't be stopped by a few sheets of reinforced steel. Then the ship shuddered. A deep, resonant thud echoed through the corridors, like something massive had just landed on the outer hull. The lights flickered again and for a heartbeat the entire crew froze. That was when the screaming started. From the lower decks. Private Wren, the youngest of the security team, flinched. What the hell was? Another scream. Cut short. No one moved. No one breathed. Then the comms crackled to life. A voice, ragged and broken, gasped out, "It's inside." Static. Silence. And then, movement. Something was crawling through the ship's veins, slithering through maintenance shafts, scraping against the walls. The crew could hear it, a wet, clicking sound like bones snapping back into place. Vera tightened her grip on her sidearm. "We hold here. We fight." But the truth was they all knew how this would end. They'd seen the other ships. They knew what this thing did to people. Then just as the first claws punched through the bulkhead door, the stars outside moved. Not the ship. Not an explosion. The stars themselves twisted, warping like something had reached out and pushed them aside. And then, light. Blinding. Pure. A radiance so intense it burned through the viewports, casting everything in stark, glowing relief. The creature at the door hissed, recoiling like it had been struck. For the first time since the nightmare began, the crew of the Elysium felt something other than terror. Hope. Because something else was here now. Something older. The Guardian. No one knew where it came from. No records, no legends, just scattered whispers from those who had seen it and lived. A presence in the dark. A shadow that stood between humanity and the things that wanted us dead. The scientists called it an anomaly. The military called it an asset. The survivors? They called it a miracle. But the Guardian didn't speak. Didn't communicate. It just acted. And right now, it was between the Elysium and the nightmare tearing its way inside. The creature at the door let out a sound, not a scream, not a roar, but something worse. A noise that didn't belong in a sane universe. It thrashed, limbs twisting in ways that made the crew's stomachs lurch, as if it was fighting something they couldn't see. Then silence. The lights stabilized. The ship stopped shaking. But the Guardian wasn't done. Outside, against the endless black, something shifted. A shape, vast and impossible, darker than the void itself, turned its attention toward the creature still lurking in the ship's belly. The crew didn't understand. They couldn't. But in that moment they felt it, something ancient, something angry. The Guardian wasn't just protecting them. It was hunting. Unanswered questions. What was the thing attacking the Elysium? Where had it come from? And why did it hate humans so much? More importantly, why did the Guardian care? The crew had no answers. Only one certainty. This wasn't over. Because deep in the ship something stirred. And the Guardian's light hadn't reached it yet. The air inside the Elysium was electric, charged with something that wasn't just fear anymore. It was the raw, primal instinct of prey that had just seen a predator bigger than their hunter step into the fray. The crew stood frozen, weapons half lowered, eyes locked on the shredded bulkhead door where the thing had been only seconds ago. Now there was only silence. And light. That impossible, searing light from outside, pouring through the viewports like liquid gold. It should have burned. It should have blinded them. But it didn't. It just warmed. Like standing near a fire after being lost in the cold too long. Private Wren was the first to break the silence. Did it leave? Captain Vera didn't answer. Her grip on her sidearm hadn't loosened. She knew better. Things like this didn't just leave. Then the ship groaned. Not the sound of metal straining. Not the hiss of a ruptured pipe. This was deeper. Older. Like the Elysium itself was feeling something it wasn't built to understand. And then, a voice. Not over the comms. Not from any human throat. It came from everywhere at once, vibrating through the walls, the floor, the bones of every person on board. No words. No language. Just sound. A hum so low it made their teeth ache, rising into something that wasn't quite a song, wasn't quite a scream. The Guardian was speaking. And whatever it was saying, the thing still hiding in the depths of the ship answered. A screech tore through the lower decks, so loud and sudden that two of the crew dropped their guns, hands clapped over their ears. The sound wasn't just noise. It was hate. Pure, undiluted, the kind of hate that didn't need a reason, the kind that existed just to destroy. Vera's breath came fast. It's still here. The light outside pulsed, brighter, harder, like a heartbeat picking up speed. The stars beyond the viewport warped, bending around something massive moving just beyond human sight. The crew could feel it now, pressure in their skulls, a weight in their chests like the universe itself was holding its breath. Then the Elysium's AI, silent until now, crackled to life. Warning. Unknown biomass detected. Multiple signatures. Multiple. The voice cut off with a burst of static. Multiple. Not one creature. Many. Wren's face went pale. Oh God. They weren't running from the Guardian. They were hiding from it. And now they were waking up. The ship's lights died again, plunging them into darkness. The only illumination came from the Guardian's glow outside, casting long, twisting shadows through the broken halls. Shadows that moved on their own. Something scraped against the floor nearby. What? Guttural. Close. Vera raised her weapon. Back to back. Now. The crew formed a tight circle, shoulders pressed together, barrels pointed outward into the black. Every breath sounded too loud. Every heartbeat felt like a drum. Then, a whisper. Right behind Wren's ear. He spun, finger tightening on the trigger. And the wall exploded. Metal tore like paper as something surged through, all teeth and claws and glistening, chitinous flesh. It lunged, and the Guardian struck. A beam of that golden light speared through the ship, slicing clean through the creature mid-leap. It didn't scream. It didn't even have time to burn. 1 second it was there. The next, gone. Dust on the wind. For a single breathless moment the crew dared to hope. Then the rest of the creatures answered. Screeches erupted from every corridor, every vent, every shadowed corner. The Elysium shook as things too fast to see, too wrong to comprehend, poured through its veins like blood rushing to a wound. The Guardian's light flared again, brighter than ever, but this time, it wasn't enough. There were too many. They were too close. And they were hungry. Vera knew in that moment they were going to die. Then, a new sound. Deeper than the creature's shrieks. Deeper than the Guardian's hum. A roar, not from the ship, not from the void outside, but from everywhere at once. The crew didn't understand. But the creatures did. They froze. Every single one. Not in fear. In recognition. Because the Guardian wasn't just speaking anymore. It was calling something. Something worse. The air turned thick with something worse than fear. It was the heavy, suffocating dread of realizing the nightmare wasn't just bigger than they'd imagined. It was smarter. The creatures had frozen, their twisted bodies coiled like springs, heads snapping toward the source of that new earth-shaking roar. Even in the dim, pulsing glow of the Guardian's light, the crew could see it, the way their jagged limbs trembled. Not from fear. From anticipation. Then the ship's comms erupted in a burst of garbled noise, and a voice, human but wrong, stretched thin like a scream, slowed down, spilled into the silence. You shouldn't have come here. Every hair on Vera's neck stood on end. That wasn't static. That wasn't some broken transmission. The voice was coming from inside the ship's systems. Ren's hands shook around his rifle. What the hell was? The lights flickered. The walls breathed. And then the Elysium's AI spoke again, but this time, its voice wasn't mechanical. It was alive. We tried to keep it out, it whispered, the words oozing through the speakers like tar. But it's been here the whole time. A new sound cut through the chaos, a wet, ripping noise from the ceiling above them. The crew barely had time to look up before something dropped into their midst. Not a creature. A person. Or what was left of one. The figure crouched on the floor, limbs bent at unnatural angles, its skin stretched too tight over bones that didn't sit right. When it lifted its head, the crew recoiled. The eyes were human. The smile wasn't. Captain, it rasped, voice too familiar. Vera's blood turned to ice. She knew that voice. It was her first officer. The one who'd gone missing 3 hours before they'd picked up the distress signal. Except, no. That wasn't possible. Because the thing grinning at her now had too many teeth, and its fingers ended in claws, and its shadow didn't move when the Guardian's light passed over it. You're not him, Vera snarled, gun raised. The thing tilted its head. Aren't I? Then it moved. Fast. Too fast. 1 second it was crouched. The next it was right in front of her, breath hot and rancid against her face. We've been waiting for you, it whispered. Behind them, the frozen creatures shuddered, and then as one they bowed. Not to the Guardian. To it. The realization hit Vera like a bullet to the chest. This wasn't just an infestation. This was a trap. And the Guardian? It hadn't come to save them. It had come to warn them. The thing wearing her officer's face smiled wider. Too late. Outside the stars went dark. Then the real screaming started. The thing wearing her officer's face lunged, just as the Guardian's light exploded through the ship. This wasn't just illumination anymore. This was fire. This was fury. The golden light burned, searing through the creatures like sunlight through fog. They didn't just die. They unraveled, their twisted forms dissolving into ash before they could even scream. But the thing pretending to be human? Just laughed. The sound wasn't right. It wasn't possible. It echoed inside their skulls, vibrating through their bones like a tuning fork struck against the edge of the universe. You don't understand, it crooned, stepping through the light like it was nothing. This isn't a rescue. Outside, the darkness where the stars had been rippled. And then, something else came through. Not the Guardian. Not the creatures. Something worse. A shape so vast it defied understanding, blotting out what little light remained. The crew didn't see it so much as feel it, the weight of something ancient and hungry pressing against the fragile shell of their ship, against the fragile shell of their minds. The thing wearing human skin spread its arms. Meet our God. Vera's breath came in ragged gasps. This was it. They were dead. Worse than dead. Then, a hand clamped down on the imposter's shoulder. A human hand. The crew spun, and there he was. The real first officer, bloodied but alive, his eyes blazing with something that wasn't entirely human either. Sorry I'm late, he growled. And then he changed. His body stretched, his skin glowing with the same golden light as the Guardian's. Not an imitation. Not a monster. A part of it. The thing wearing his face screamed, a real scream this time, raw and terrified, as the officer's burning hands clamped around its head. You should have stayed in the dark, he whispered. And then he pulled. The creature came apart like wet paper, its form dissolving into screaming tendrils of shadow before bursting into flames. Outside, the massive presence recoiled. The Guardian's light surged, wrapping around the ship like a fist, and for the first time the crew heard it speak. Not in words. In memory. In feeling. Images flashed through their minds. A war older than stars. A prison built between dimensions. And the reason the Guardian protected humanity. We were the key. Not the lock. Not the weapon. The key. The thing in the dark wasn't a god. It was an inmate. And humanity? We'd been the ones who put it there. The officer. No, the Guardian's voice, cut through the chaos. Now. The crew didn't hesitate. They couldn't. Every human instinct, every cell in their bodies knew what to do. As one they reached out, not with hands but with will, and pushed. The ancient thing howled as the prison slammed shut again, its form crumpling like a dying star before vanishing into the void. Silence. Then, the stars came back. The officer collapsed, his glow fading. The Guardian's presence withdrew, leaving only a whisper in their minds. Until next time. As the crew picked themselves up, staring at each other with dawning understanding, one terrible truth remained. This wasn't over. It would never be over. And somewhere in the dark between galaxies, something scratched at the walls of its cage. But for now they were safe. The Elysium turned toward home. Toward Earth. Where billions of unsuspecting souls carried fragments of the same power that had just saved them all. And none of them knew. Yet. The Elysium drifted through the silent void, its battered hull still humming with residual energy from the encounter. Inside, the crew moved like ghosts, shell-shocked, hollow-eyed but alive. Alive in a universe that had just revealed its darkest secrets to them. Captain Vera stood at the viewport, staring at the distant glimmer of Earth growing larger on the screen. Oh, it looked so small from here. So fragile. She flexed her fingers, half expecting to see that golden light still clinging to her skin. But there was nothing. Just human flesh. Just her. Behind her, the others were quiet. Ren sat slumped against a console, his rifle across his lap, fingers absently tracing the scratches left by claws that no longer existed. The medic, the only one who hadn't stopped shaking since it ended, was running scans on the first officer. The real one. The man who had been something more than human, if only for a moment. Now he just looked exhausted. "You knew," Vera said softly, not turning around. Pause. Then a tired sigh. "Not all of it." She finally faced him. His eyes were bloodshot, his face drawn. He looked like a man who had carried a weight too heavy for any human to bear. "How long?" she asked. "Since the first time I died." The words hung in the air, heavier than the silence that followed. Ren's head snapped up. "What?" The officer, Kerr, his name was Kerr, rubbed his face. 3 years ago. Deep Space Patrol. We found something. A relic. I touched it." His voice cracked. "It chose me. Not because I was special. Because I was close." Vera's stomach twisted. "The Guardian." Kerr nodded. "A piece of it. A spark. Just enough to keep the door locked. Just enough to remember." The medic swallowed hard. "Remember what?" Kerr's gaze drifted to the stars. "That we built the cage. That we forgot. That somewhere in our DNA, in our souls, we carry the key to keeping the dark where it belongs." A chill ran through the crew. Ren let out a shaky laugh. "You're telling me we're, what? Cosmic jailers?" "Not just us," Kerr murmured. "All of humanity. Every single one of us. We just don't remember." The ship hummed around them, the sound suddenly too loud, too alive. Vera exhaled slowly. "And the things that attacked us?" Kerr's jaw tightened. "Scavengers. Parasites. They've been waiting for one of us to wake up. To remember." He looked at his hands. "Now they know someone has." Silence. Then, the Elysium's comms crackled. A voice, crisp and familiar, filled the bridge. Elysium *, this is Earth Orbital Control. We've been tracking your trajectory. Is everything all right?" Vera stared at the comm panel. How could she possibly answer that? She glanced at Kerr. He gave her the smallest nod. She keyed the mic. "Control, this is Elysium," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "We're coming home." Pause. Then hesitant, copy that, Elysium. "Welcome back, *." The line went dead. No one spoke. Outside, Earth grew brighter. Closer. Safe. For now. Epilogue. 3 months later, Vera stood on a quiet beach, the waves lapping at her boots. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of gold and red. Beautiful. Normal. She flexed her fingers again. No light. But sometimes, sometimes when she closed her eyes she could still feel it. That warmth. That power. That knowing. Behind her, sand crunched underfoot. Kerr sat beside her, silent for a long moment before speaking. They're calling it a navigation system malfunction. Vera snorted. Of course they are. The official report says we never left the solar system. Convenient. Kerr sighed. They'll never believe us. Vera watched the horizon. Doesn't matter if they do. Because the truth was out there whether anyone acknowledged it or not. Humanity wasn't just a species. It was a safeguard. A lock on a door that should never be opened. And somewhere in the dark between the stars, something pressed against that door. Waiting. But for now the waves still rolled. The sun still set. And the Elysium-S crew, those who had seen the truth, would keep watching. Because the universe was vast. And humanity? Humanity was its guardian. The end.